Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I betray him to you?" They paid him 30 pieces of silver. From that moment he began to look for an opportunity to betray him. On the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Where do you want us to make the preparations for you to eat the Passover?" He said to them, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says my time is near. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, he took his place with the 12, and while they were eating, he said to them, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." And they became greatly distressed and began to say to him one after another, "Surely not I, Lord." He said to them, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. For the Son of Man is going as it has been written of him, but woe to that one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born." Then Judas, who betrayed him, said, "Surely not I, Rabbi." He replied, "You have said so." While they were eating, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat. This is my body." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which will be poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Truly, I tell you, I will never again drink of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." When they had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered." Peter said to him, "Though all become deserters because of you, I will never desert you." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, "Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all of the disciples. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane. He said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and began to be grieved and distressed. He said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even unto death. Remain here and stay awake with me." And going a little further, he threw himself on the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." Then he came and found the disciples sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So, you could not stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again he went away for the 2nd time and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink from it, your will be done." Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So he went away again for a 3rd time and prayed, saying the same words. Then he came to the disciples and said, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? See, the hour is at hand, for the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, and with him a crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I kiss is the man, arrest him." At once he came up to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you are here to do." Then they came and laid hands on him and arrested him. Suddenly, one of those with Jesus put his hand on his sword, drew it and struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his right ear. But Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back in its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think I cannot appeal to my Father, who will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But then how will the scriptures be fulfilled which say it must happen this way? At that hour Jesus said to the crowd, "Have you come with swords and clubs to arrest me as if I were a bandit? Day after day when I sat teaching in the temple, you did not arrest me. But all of this has taken place so that the scriptures may be fulfilled." Then all of the disciples deserted him and fled. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, at whose house the scribes and elders had gathered. But Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going inside, he sat among the guards to see how this would end. Now the chief priest and the whole council were looking for false testimony against Jesus so that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last, 2 came forward and said, "We heard this fellow say, 'I am able to destroy the temple of God and build it again in 3 days.'" Then the high priest stood up and said, "Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?" But Jesus was silent. The high priest said to him, "I put you under oath before the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Jesus answered, "You have said so. But I tell you from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has blasphemed. Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?" They all said, "He deserves death." Then they began to spit at him in the face and strike him. Some of them slapped him, mocking him, saying, "Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who is it that struck you?" Now Peter was outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him and said, "You also were with Jesus, the Galilean." But he denied it before them all, saying, "I do not know what you're talking about." When he went out to the porch, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." After a little while, some of the bystanders came up to Peter and said, "Certainly you are also one of them, for your accent betrays you." Then he began to curse and swore an oath, "I do not know the man." At that moment, the cock crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said to him, that before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. When morning came, all the chief priests and elders of the people conferred together against Jesus in order to bring about his death. Then they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he repented and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders. He said, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." They said, "What is that to us? See to it yourself." Throwing down the pieces of silver in the temple, he departed and went and hanged himself. But the chief priest, taking up the pieces of silver, said, "It is not lawful they be put into the treasury, since they are blood money." And after conferring together, they used them to buy the potter's field as a place to bury foreigners. For this reason, that field has been called the Field of Blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of the one on whom a price had been set, on whom some of the people of Israel had set a price, and gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord commanded me. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You say so." But when he was accused by the chief priest and elders, he did not answer. So Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many accusations they make against you?" But Jesus gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now at the festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner for them, anyone whom they wanted. At that time they had a notorious prisoner called Jesus Barabbas. So after they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas, or Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" For he knew that it was out of jealousy that they had handed him over. While he was sitting in the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with this innocent man, for today I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him." Now the chief priests and elders persuaded the people to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus killed. So Pilate asked them again, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate asked them, "Then what should I do with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" All of them said, "Let him be crucified." Pilate asked them, "But why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather a riot was beginning, he took some water and washed his hands before the crowd and said, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourself." Then the people as a whole said, "His blood be on us and on our children." Then he released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, handed him over to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters and gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand and knelt down before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spat at him, and they took the reed and struck him in the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him and led him away to crucify him. As they went out, they came upon a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they compelled this man to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they crucified him, they divided up his clothes among themselves by casting lots, and sat down there and kept watch over him. Over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, King of the Jews." 2 bandits were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are God's son, come down from that cross." In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and elders, were mocking him, saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down from that cross now and we'll believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him if he wants to, for he said, 'I'm God's son.'" The 2 bandits who were crucified with him also taunted him in the same way. From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. At about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani?" That is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "Listen, he's calling for Elijah." At once one of them ran and got a sponge and filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But the other said, "Wait, let us see if Elijah will come and take him down." Then Jesus cried again in a loud voice and breathed his last. The curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook. The rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised up. And after his resurrection, they came out of the tomb and entered the holy city and appeared to many. Now, when the centurion and those who were with him, who kept watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what had taken place, they were terrified and said, "Truly, this man was God's son." Many women were also there, looking on from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee and had provided for him. Among them were Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. When it was evening, there came a man from Arimathea named Joseph. He was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. So Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock. Then he rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the tomb. The next day, that is, after the day of preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, "Sir, we remember what that impostor said while he was still alive, that after 3 days I will rise again. Therefore, command that the tomb be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise, his disciples may steal him away and say, 'He has been raised from the dead.' And that last deception would be worse than the first." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard of soldiers. Go and make it as secure as you can." So they went with the guard and made the tomb secure by sealing the stone.